Hello, friends, and thank you as always for visiting the Legend Sports Universe YouTube channel, Legend Sports Universe, where legends play forever. This third episode of Stuff of Legends wraps up the opening weekend blitz for the podcast. Playoff football pun fully intended. Friday night's debut laid the groundwork and got those unfamiliar with the Legend Sports universe a little more in tune with both my projects and my plans for this podcast, including going beyond my projects. Last night's second episode dove into the heart of Stuff of Legends with the debut of the Drama in Real Life segment and a tour around the Legend Sports Universe Baseball League. Tonight's episode doubles down on drama in real life and also takes a deeper details venture into the shop talk segment and some project building talk in an episode focused on a long held passion of mine, boxing. As passionate as I am about sports history, the nature of the Legend Sports universe's structure of having all-time greats of all sports entering at different random times means that while rivalries between franchises can certainly be carried out, Yankees Red Sox, Eagles Cowboys, Lakers Celtics, etc., historic one-on-one player matchups, particularly in big moments that may have inexorably linked them in history, are a bit more rare to come by. So when it happens, it's great fun. And when it lives up to the real life scenario, well, for someone developing these projects from the ground up as I do, it doesn't get much better than that. And that scenario is the basis for this episode's drama in real life. When the Legend Sports Universe Boxing Federation began, and I established the master champion pools in each weight class, then drew the random generator for which 25 champions would be first to join the LSUBF in each class, I concede I was more focused on the potential fantasy fights that could emerge down the line than I was with the historic bouts that could be replicated within the universe framework. Sugar Ray Robinson versus Thomas Hearns at welterweight, Roberto Duran versus Henry Armstrong at lightweight, Salvador Sanchez versus Prince Nassim Hamed at featherweight, and possibly the most debated non-heavyweight fight I've heard debated in all my years as a boxing fan, Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Carlos Monzon at middleweight. Though, in the interest of full disclosure, Hagler is my favorite fighter of all time. The LSUBF's initial middleweight pool was loaded, not just with Hagler and Monzon, but Gennady Golovkin too, as well as a solid series of next-level fighters like Michael Nunn, Sergio Martinez, and Dick Tiger. When the initial record-building fights were simmed in title bout to establish rankings for the championship tournaments, most fighters landed with between 10 and 15 bouts under their belt. The top 8 made the initial tournaments, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, etc. When I filled out the middleweight bracket, one first-round matchup stood out, and it wasn't Hagler, or Monzon, or Golovkin. It was Tony Zale versus Rocky Graziano. For decades, the real-life Tony Zale-Rocky Graziano Middleweight Championship Series, which took place in 1946, 47, and 48, was widely considered the greatest trilogy of all time. They weren't fights, they were wars without survivors, wrote famed boxing historian Burt Sugar. The first 2 bouts, in particular, were mind-blowing shootouts. In the first fight, held at the original Yankee Stadium, Graziano was down for a 5 count in the first round, but came back and dropped Zale at the end of the second round for a 3 count. Graziano continued to pound away savagely, and after 5 rounds, Zale looked like a beaten fighter. But then came the unexpected 6th round. Showing the heart of a champion, Zale, who injured his right hand back in the second, garnered the strength to fire a terrific right to Graziano's gut, and followed it up with a left hook to the chin. Graziano went down and didn't rise until just after referee Ruby Goldstein completed the count of 10. The Associated Press wrote that Zale, quote, looked like a man who had been in hand-to-hand combat with a buzzsaw, and somehow much to his own astonishment, had come out ahead. The man of steel had to be propped up and led around the ring carefully as he waved to the crowd after the knockout. Ring Magazine, considered the Bible of boxing, called it the fight of the year for 1946. 50 years later, when Ring Magazine formulated a list of the 100 greatest title fights of all time, Zale Graziano won, ranked 5th. They ranked the second Zale Graziano bout second. Held at Chicago Stadium in 1947, the Warriors slugged it out once again. In the second round, Zale opened a severe cut over Graziano's left eye. In the third round, a solid right hand dropped Graziano for no count. Zale pummeled Graziano against the ropes as the round ended. Round 4 brought more of the same punishment to Graziano, whose right eye was now swollen shut. Between the fourth and fifth rounds, Whitey Bimstein, Graziano's trainer and cutman, took a coin and pressed it against his closed right eye, breaking the skin to reduce the pressure. This allowed Graziano to partially regain his vision. In the sixth round, a barrage of Graziano right hands dropped Zale. When he rose, Graziano drove him to the ropes, draping him over them under a hail of punches. Referee Johnny Bear stopped the bout at 210, and Graziano was the new world middleweight champion. On a list covering nearly 100 years of boxing, Ring Magazine determined the first 2 Zale Graziano fights were among the 5 best title fights ever. Could their encounter in the LSUBF live up to that? The bout started like a Rocky movie, center ring slugging it out. No wait, no hesitation. Zale was getting the better of the exchanges, landing 3 for every 1 he ate. His body work was exceptional in the early going. Graziano started getting the better of things in the second, trapping Zale along the ropes and peppering him with thudding combinations, while also defending a bit better. In the final 30 seconds, Graziano stunned Zale with an uppercut and forced Zale to cover up, absorbing blow after blow. Just as it seemed Zale may taste the canvas, he rocked Graziano with a clean combination that forced Graziano to backpedal and got Zale out of danger as the bell sounded. And so it would go in the third. A strong Zale round early, but Graziano would stagger Zale later in the round, taking control, and Zale would bang Graziano off of him to survive the round. Zale would temper the pace somewhat in the fourth and start to be a bit more precise with his punches. But while Zale was landing more blows, the blows from Graziano seemed to be the more punishing shots. When someone seemed shaken, it tended to be Zale. Through 4, the rounds were debatable, and scorecards, though nobody expected them, come into play, were anyone's guess. Graziano would land a banging body shot in the fifth, but he was struggling to land punches in bunches. If he could string more together, he might be able to get Zale in deep trouble. Zale started to catch Graziano with uppercuts inside more frequently as Rocky continued to pursue, and Graziano started to show weathering from the accumulation of Zale blows to that point. Incredibly, through 6 rounds, while both fighters had absorbed plenty of punishment, nobody had hit the deck yet. I had Zale up by 2 points at that point. His quality of blows, while not at Graziano's level, was good enough to, in combination with his greater quantity, give him the edge. The accumulation on Graziano would catch up to him when his Zale uppercut, that started to play a more dominant role starting in the 5th round, caught Graziano clean and dropped him to the canvas just inside the 2-minute mark. Rocky would rise and eat a pair of clean right hands. He'd try to dig to the body, but Zale's defense was on point. Zale would land a pair to the body and another uppercut, and it seemed another knockdown was imminent. It was. But it wasn't Graziano who would go down. Rocky would land a picture-perfect uppercut after slipping a right hand, stepping inside, and banging a thundering blow to put Zale down for 10, giving Rocky Graziano, off the canvas, a knockout victory. The LSUBF contest most closely resembled the second bout, which Zale was in control of until Graziano's furious comeback. He had dropped Graziano in the third and was clearly ahead with the judges when Graziano pummeled him, dropping him once before battering him into a TKO loss. Their fight in the Legend Sports universe wasn't an exact match. It didn't need to be. It captured the real life vibe while creating a compelling story in its own right. And who knows, maybe the LSUBF will see a Zale Graziano trilogy down the line as well. So, a few years ago, before my Legend Sports universe really became a thing, I discussed in a few places that I was working on the title bout to fight night conversion project, through which I developed a system to convert ratings from the classic title bout boxing board and computer game, created by the iconic Trunzo brothers, into fighter ratings for use in Fight Night Champion, the best boxing that had been produced to that point for the consoles. But after EA took down the boxer share for Fight Night, I could no longer share fighters I created or store fighters I wasn't using at a given time. And so my attention shifted to the new Esports Boxing Club, which would over the next 2 years morph into a release called Undisputed. So early last year, when I debuted the LSUBF, I had formulated a system that used Title Bout as the basis for ratings for both Fight Night Champion and for Undisputed. As such, the LSUBF was born as a three-headed monster, a boxing world forged from Title Bout at its core, with Fight Night Champion and Undisputed, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, enlisted for what they do best. The games are good at different things. Undisputed is a good game that could and should be great. The fighters look great, it's visually pleasing, and, for a majority of fighters, the game does a solid job as a sim once you play with the ratings a bit, which is kind of my thing. Movement is fluid for the most part, particularly in terms of moving around the ring. Undisputed's main issue is nuance. The game isn't deep enough there, so your top end defensive fighters, or fighters with an unusual style, are a bit hard to replicate in Undisputed. Defensive wizards are non existent. Awkward styles like Nassim Hamed aren't replicated. Guys with physical traits outside the norm. Guys who are particularly tall or with long reaches for their weight class. Think Sonny Liston, Thomas Hearns, or Paul the Punisher Williams. Can't be done. The trait system helps add nuance to fighters to a degree. You can have a guy be a strong inside fighter, excel with particular punches, etc., which is great. So, getting how a fighter fights is solid in most cases, but with the issues I just mentioned, it's significantly off in others. Fight Night Champion gives you significantly more control over how a fighter performs both mentally and stylistically. Slick defensive fighters, for example, can be executed far more easily. Punch ratios, particularly supremely jab heavy boxers like Larry Holmes or the aforementioned Carlos Monzon, can be replicated. So you have more tools in the shop, so to speak, to craft your fighter with. Will FNC look a bit dated? Yeah. But the strength of Fight Night Champion for me was, after tons of testing, learning how to make fighters fight properly. Accuracy ratings matter. More fighter style options to choose from matter. Defense ratings matter. Are there issues? Sure. The decision to make punch power and block power, or hand and foot speed, singular power or speed ratings combining the two, for example, is absurdly stupid for a game that gets so much nuance right. But the fighters and situations Undisputed doesn't do well are situations that Fight Night Champion handled very well, in my opinion. So between the two of them, I felt most, if not all, bases got covered. As for Title Bout, its biggest strength is in its ratings accuracy, its ratings depth, and an approach that really gives the feeling fighters are performing well, not just looking good, which is the danger of a graphical representation. I know for a younger leaning crowd that is most likely drawn to Undisputed, the concept of simulating boxing in a card game format or text based format sounds dull. Title Bout made it feel alive, and its main method for doing so is the purpose of this episode of Shop Talk: control factor. Given that more than 90% of the bouts within the LSUBF will be run through the title bout engine, its strength means the project on the whole will be strong. It's just on me to do what I do in bringing it to life within the Legend Sports universe. And so, my challenge in developing the LSUBF in this three-headed monster format was how to implement Title Bout's control factor within Fight Night and Undisputed. Styles make fights is an adage that's been said countless times over the years, because it's true, and it's the hardest part for a graphical simulation to represent well. The big hangup with a graphical simulation is that because it assumes a human being is going to be doing at least half the work, controlling one fighter, regardless of whether a person is controlling the other, stuff like controlling the pace is minimized if not ignored, because the user will dictate the pace himself. If you want to have a measured pace fighter, like Ray Leonard really was most times, and make him be somebody who throws 100 punches around, well, as a user, you can do that. So, breaking down the fighter AI, analyzing the fighter mentality, and trying to find a way to incorporate control factor into the fighter ratings certainly came with its challenges. On top of that, because Fight Night Champion and Undisputed operate very differently from a ratings and style perspective, I couldn't just port the same exact approach. For example, a 10% penalty to endurance for each point of CF less than the other fighter. It's not that clean. The goal of this system is to translate title bouts' abstract control factor, a fighter's ability to dictate the pace and style of a fight, into tangible, in-game slider and attribute adjustments. This ensures that fighters with superior ring generalship gain a realistic advantage in the simulation. The system is a two-part process: game selection and attribute adjustment. First, the game selection protocol. We run two checks. First is the reach anomaly. If the reach difference is 4 inches or more, we go to Fight Night Champion. Undisputed just cannot accurately replicate a Sonny Liston or Larry Holmes jab keeping a guy at bay, particularly in Liston's regard when it comes to reach. Number two, the elite defender. If a fighter has a top tier defense rating in title bout, -4 or better, we go to Fight Night. We need those nuanced defensive mechanics that Undisputed lacks. If they pass those checks, we head to the modern engine in Undisputed. Once the game is picked, we calculate the effective control factor advantage. This is where the rubber meets the road. We take the gap between the fighters and control factor, modify it based on the fighter's overall rating, and apply a skill tier resistance. Basically, if you're fighting an elite ring general, it's harder to dominate him. That final number dictates the buffs and the nerfs. In Undisputed, the controlling fighter gets a stamina efficiency buff. He burns less energy because he's dictating the pace. The controlled fighter, he takes a stamina penalty. And if the gap is huge, classified as a major disadvantage, we actually drop his activity tier and his accuracy. He literally becomes less active and less precise because he's being controlled. In Fight Night, we attack the sliders directly. If you are being controlled, your aggressiveness and combination sliders drop. You throw fewer punches. You hesitate. This ensures that a high CF fighter like Carlos Monzon doesn't just win because he punches well, he wins because he forces you to fight his fight. This comprehensive system ensures that the strategic element of control is consistently and logically applied across both game engines, tailored to their unique mechanics. The results so far have been strong. Fighters are largely performing as anticipated in terms of punch output and style, and results have been in line with sim results within the title bout engine, with only a couple of exceptions. Which is good. We want exceptions sometimes. We don't want everything to be completely predictable. I'm always looking to improve my projects. I always look for something I may have missed that can enhance it further. So the current control factor implementation will likely see tweaks as more fights are run and thus more data collected, because work in the shop is never really done. In tonight's edition of Across the Universe, we move to the squared circle, where the Legend Sports Universe Boxing Federation has reached a fever pitch. We are deep into the inaugural championship tournaments, and we have 10 weight classes to go to hold semifinals for. The fields are down to the final four in each division. Again, each weight class a master pool of all the major belt champions in their history, all the lineal champions in their history. 25 were chosen at random from the starting pool. Lots of greats have not entered the LSUBF yet. So when we get to the heavyweights and you wonder why you don't see Frazier and Ali, it's because they're not here yet. They ultimately will be. But we can only deal with the pools that we have right now. And we're still on the verge of some absolute dream matchups. We start in the lightweight division because the potential final here is, fittingly, the stuff of legend. On one side of the bracket, number one seed Edwin Rosario, who has been a buzzsaw in the LSUBF, sitting at a perfect 18-0 with 18 knockouts. The heavy-fisted Rosario takes on the number four seed Roberto Duran. Duran 13-1 with 11 knockouts. Again, don't worry about the ratings, the rankings so much at this point. That's largely based on who they have fought to this point and how many bouts they have had at this point. So while Rosario has been exceptional, he is deserving of that number one seed. That doesn't mean that we think that he's a better fighter than Roberto Duran. Duran is the historical heavyweight of this division. He will face Rosario here on one side of the bracket. On the other side, we have the number two seed, Freddie Welsh, taking on the number three seed, Homicide Hank, Henry Armstrong. Armstrong 16-0 with 15 knockouts. Now, again, forgetting the rankings and just going on reputation and talent and ability. If the chalk holds, if the favorites win here, if Duran can get past the heavy punching Rosario and Armstrong handles the technically gifted Welsh, we get Roberto Duran versus Henry Armstrong for the title. That is the immovable object meeting the unstoppable force, and that is the fight we all want to see in the lightweight division. Moving up to welterweight, where the greatest of all time is lurking. Sugar Ray Robinson enters the semifinals as the number 6 seed. Don't let that number fool you again. He's undefeated at 11-0 with 9 knockouts. He hasn't fought as often as the others, hence the ranking, but he has been flawless. He takes on the number 7 seed, the Ragamuffin Man, Lloyd Honeyghan, 14-2 with 12 knockouts. In real life, Honeyghan was the ultimate spoiler, known mostly for shocking Donald Curry. He'll try to do the same to the GOAT here in Robinson. In the other bracket, we have a clash of styles. The number one seed, Ike Bazooka Corte, has been very impressive to this point, 16-1, 13 knockouts. But the man at the 4 seed is Thomas Hitman Hearns. Hearns 14-1 with 13 knockouts. Corte has one of the best jabs in history, but Hearns has the freakish reach and the right hand from hell. If Hearns and Robinson both win, we get another super fight final. Hearns and Sugar Ray Robinson for the welterweight crown. Now we'll talk about the middleweights, and this bracket is fascinating because we talk about the rankings, not really telling the whole story. The number one seed entering the tournament was Michael, second to none. He's earned it in the ring, 18-0, 15 knockouts. But he has to face the number 5 seed, Carlos Monzon. Monzon 14-1 with 10 knockouts on the short list for the greatest middleweight of all time. In our universe, he's the underdog by seeding, but he's the favorite by reputation. Can Nunn's slick southpaw style keep King Carlos off of him? And on the other side, well, we have my personal favorite. The number 2 seed, marvelous Marvin Hagler, 15-0 with 14 knockouts. Billy Papke took him to the distance for the first time of anybody in his LSUBF career here. But Hagler's still that perfect 15-0. He has been a destroyer. He steps in against the number 6 seed, Rocky Graziano. who we just talked about in our drama and real life segment. And we saw him get off the canvas to knock out Tony Zale. We know he has the heart of a lion and the power to end it late. But Hagler has the granite chin. And Graziano hoping that he has the equalizer. This is going to be a war of attrition. Again, Hagler and Monzon for the belt, looming as a possible championship fight. At heavyweight, a very specific narrative develops. The old school versus the Klitschko's. Number 4 seed Vladimir Klitschko takes on the number 1 seed Floyd Patterson. A massive size discrepancy. Remember, Patterson mostly fought at what would now be considered cruiserweight. Patterson brings the peekaboo, the speed, but Vladimir is a giant who controls the range like nobody else. Can Patterson get inside before eating the steel hammer of a jab? On the other side, Vladimir's brother, the number 6 seed Vitaly Klitschko, faces the number 2 seed Jimmy Ellis. Ellis has been a bit of a surprise so far. 14-1, 6 knockouts. We are staring down the barrel of the fight they said would never happen. The all-Klitschko heavyweight final. It is up to the Ali-era technicians, Patterson and Ellis, to stop a Ukrainian takeover in the LSUBF. Now at junior welterweight, we have a matchup that screams national pride. The number 1 seed, Wilfred Benitez, 20-1 with 17 knockouts, takes on the number 4 seed, Miguel Cotto. Two Puerto Rican legends, Benitez, the defensive wizard, El Radar, Cotto, the relentless body puncher. This is a main event anywhere in the world. The winner gets the survivor of number 7, Nicolino Loesch, who takes on Zab Judah. Loesch is the untouchable, the defensive master, but Judah has the speed. This division is a tactician's dream in the Final Four. Rounding out the card, we'll go through the depth in the other divisions at lightweight. Lightweight number 1 seed Steve Sullivan faces the late great Diego Corrales, the undefeated number 4 seed, 10-0. Corrales brings devastating power and height and reach. On the other side, it's the number 2 seed Asalino Freitas against Cornelius Boza Edwards. Freitas the knockout artist, Boza Edwards as tough as they come. At junior middleweight, the number 1 seed Suryasin Zurich faces Italian legend Nino Benvenuti. But keep an eye on the number 2 seed, the body snatcher Mike McCallum. 13-0 with 12 knockouts, a terrifying force to this point in the LSUBF. He takes on number 3 seed Carmelo Bossi. McCallum feels like the man to beat in this class, but Benvenuti is going to have something to say about that, I think. At super middleweight, the number 1 seed is Caleb Plant, and he looks to outbox number 5 seed Frankie Lyles, while on the other side, the eccentric and powerful number 2 seed Chris Eubank, 19-2, faces the hard-hitting number 3 seed Chong Pao Park. Eubank and Park is a sleeper for fight of the night. That should be a really good war, actually. Park has the power. He's going to do some damage here, but Eubank, just so crafty, so talented. Still think he's the favorite in that one. At cruiserweight, the number 1 seed, Taufik Belbouli, has a massive test against the number 4 seed. Evander, the real deal Holyfield, undefeated at 10-0. Looking to clean out the division before potentially moving up to heavyweight. That is a possibility, but that'll come down the line. The other semi features number 2 seed Leroy Murphy against the undefeated number 3 seed Vasily Zhirov. And finally at light heavyweight, the number 1 seed Zoltar Dai boasts a massive record of 25-1. That's about the most fights that anybody has to this point in the LSUBF. He faces the rugged number 5 seed Melio Bettina. But on the other side, a fascinating clash. Number 7 seed, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, faces the number 3 seed, the Jinx, Michael Spinks. His Jinx right hand looking to spoil the party for Jack O'Brien. Spinks coming in the favorite in this class. That still holds true. Let me quickly wrap up the lower weight classes whose semifinal bouts were already held. So the championship bouts, which will move to 15 rounds from 12, as I mentioned earlier, are already set on tap. Bantamweight, the number 2 seed, Jeff Fennick, the Marrickville Mauler, survived number 3 seed, Jolton Jeff Chandler to make the final. where he will face number one seed Rockabye Ruben Olivares, who was tested but survived against Johnny Colon. Fennec Olivares for the title should be an absolute war. Then at junior featherweight, number 3 seed Victor Callejas was very impressive in his 6th round knockout of number 2 seed Salim Mejkun, whose seeding entering the tournament was admittedly debatable. But now, Callejas gets the big test. Number 1 seed and undefeated, Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao, 23-0, 23 knockouts, who obliterated Daniel Ponce de Leon in their semifinal bout, knocking him out in round number 4. Callejas has power, but Pacquiao looks unstoppable right now. Lastly, at featherweight, a bout that should be all sorts of entertaining. Number 3 seed, Prince Nassim Hamed, who wiped out the number 2 seed, Antonio Gomez, with a second round knockout. Now he gets the number 1 seed, the great Salvador Sanchez, the showman versus the tactician. This is going to be a fun one. I don't know too many people who will root for Hamed here. He irritated a lot of people, but he was fun to watch, and he was really talented. We will see. Hamed Sanchez for the featherweight title down the line. But when the LSUBF picks up this week, we will have semifinal bouts continuing in the LSUBF inaugural championship tournaments. We're going to close out this debut weekend slate of podcast episodes with our first trip around the horn. I want to do this periodically because I think it's important, and I am admittedly not as great at it as I should be, particularly when it comes to like people's stuff on Facebook and stuff like that. I look at stuff that intrigues me, it interests me. I don't even always click the like button. I certainly don't comment as much as I probably should about that. So I want to make sure I take some time here periodically on this podcast and tout some other projects in the sports sim and sports gaming community that have caught my eye recently. This is a relative quick hitter, but I urge you to check these out. Our friend Beatles Eternally always has a truckload of various baseball content, but he has been in the midst of a 1971 project using Action PC Baseball that I urge you to take a peek in on his channel. Play Baseball Fan 879, our friend Tim, has been running a fun Roberto Clemente Chase to 3,000 Hits project in 1972 using Stratomatic. Al Red Sox Fan has had a host of baseball on in the past few weeks, including his 1976 bicentennial tournament using Stratomatic, as well as one-offs with History Maker Baseball. Al always one of the best listens in this community. Dwayne Martz has unfortunately been on the disabled list under the weather the past couple of weeks. Hope you are feeling better, my friend. But he'll be back soon with his 1978 project using APBA and Digital Diamond Baseball. Off YouTube and in the Facebook communities, fitting for this boxing heavy edition of Stuff of Legends, Greg Rashid has been actively carrying out a fun project, taking his liking of former heavyweight contender Devarro Williamson and matching him up against all comers using Legends of Boxing 2. You can follow that and other bouts that Greg runs frequently in the Sports Simulations and Replays channel. Sticking with boxing, in the title bout from Xanadu Games Group, formerly the title bout 2 group, Jim Trunzo is no longer involved in it so directly anyway, but William Zahn is currently working on an updated version of title bout with the support and blessing of the great Jim Trunzo. And in that group, Chad Stewart is doing a great job with his FBU Fantasy Boxing magazine. It's a deep dive into fighters, which I certainly appreciate. He gives full stories. He gives really cool old style magazine covers. It's got a great vibe to it. A really fun look in if you're a boxing fan. Puts a ton of effort into his posts. If you aren't already a subscriber to Jamie Marshall's Sports Games Journal group and his magazine slash Substack posts, however he is producing content, the point is, you should be. His articles are a fun read, and his recent one, Why Historical Sports Games Aren't Like Monopoly, speaks to the heart of the replay gamer. Now, anyone who knows me knows I am not a replay game person myself. It's just not my thing. But his article helps get into the mind of those who do replays and where they find their enjoyment in it. Always a worthwhile read from Jamie. I'll try to do quick hits like this from around the community semi-regularly because these guys, and certainly plenty I didn't mention this time around for sure, deserve the shout. But for now, that will wrap up this episode of Stuff of Legends. I sincerely thank anyone who took even a moment to check out this podcast, be it a piece, a single episode, or all 3 episodes from this debut weekend. Stuff of Legends will now fall into a regular 10 p.m. Eastern slot on Friday nights. The next episode will set up the LSUFL's divisional playoffs after this week's wildcard games, which air Monday and Tuesday. Then touch on the LSUBL's Year 5 rookie draft, which airs this week as well as another drama in real life segment and a check-in on the LSUBA's Year 2 season start in the under construction segment. Hope to see you then. Bang that like button, subscribe if you haven't as of yet, and most importantly, everybody, be good to each other, and we'll talk soon. See you during the week, next Friday, for Stuff of Legends.